host, Michelle Marchant Johnson, and I'm so excited and thrilled to welcome this global audience of women from around the world who are here to understand more about the hearts and minds of men. And kicking us off for this event is a returning guest, an all-time favorite, and that is the wonderful John Gray. So happy to have you, John. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you so much. So, of course, for many of you, John needs no introduction, but I will read just a brief formal introduction for those of you that may want to know a little more about him or his work. John Gray is the author of the most well-known and trusted relationship book of all times, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. USA Today listed his book as one of the top 10 most influential books of the last quarter century. In hardcover, it was the #1 best-selling book of the 1990s. And I bought it back then too, John. Dr. Gray's books are translated into approximately 45 languages in more than 100 countries, and it continues to be a bestseller. Dr. Gray has written over 20 books. His most recent book is Beyond Mars and Venus. That's still true, right?
That's still true, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, awesome. Because I know you're prolific on the book, so I wanted to make sure I'm up to date. His Mars-Venus book series has forever changed the way men and women view their relationships. John helps men and women better understand and respect their differences in both personal and professional relationships. And ladies, we're so lucky to have John here because he's going to help us to understand more about men. His approach combines specific communication techniques with healthy, nutritional choices that create the brain and body chemistry for lasting health, happiness, and romance. His many books, blogs, and free online workshops at marsvenus.com provide practical insights to improve relationships at all stages of life and love. An advocate of health and optimal brain function, he also provides natural solutions for overcoming depression, anxiety, and stress to support increased energy, libido, hormonal balance, and better sleep. He's appeared repeatedly on Oprah, as well as on the Dr. Oz Show, Today, CBS This Morning, Good Morning America, and others. He's been profiled in Time, Forbes, USA Today, and People. He was also the subject of a 3-hour special hosted by Barbara Walters. John Gray lives in Northern California with his wife, Bonnie. They've been happily married for over 30 years and have 3 grown daughters and 4 grandchildren. And he is an avid follower of his own health and relationship advice. And again, you can find out more about John at marsvenus.com. And John is a returning guest on our program too. So we may not be the top of those media outlets, but we're so thrilled to have you back, John.
Oh, I'm so happy to be with you. And let me say that being on your show, I can say a lot more than on those media outlets. So.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. Yeah, we can get John unplugged here, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. So, John, as I was sharing with you just briefly today, this audience, for the large part, is made up of a little bit more mature women, the 40s, 50s, 60s, many of whom are professional women who've had some success in their careers, may have struck out a time or two in love, or may have gone through divorce or painful breakups. And many of these women feel frustrated and confused, and it feels like maybe dating has changed so dramatically since they were dating, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I really want to tune into the needs of this audience for the purpose of this interview to help them understand some things that can really help them to have more success with men, because they're happy with so many aspects of their lives and have been successful, but many haven't had the success or the joy that they wanted in the love life department. So that's kind of how I want to tee things up, right?
That sounds great, and that's a very common thing today. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, for these ladies that may be in this situation that I just teed up here, what are some of the pieces of advice? I'll leave this really open-ended. What are some of the pieces of advice you might give them, or what are some of the things they might be able to take from or learn from past relations to help set them up for more success in the future?
All right. Well, that was a big question. So we'll start with, what are we going to learn from past relationships? There's 2 ways to end a relationship. One is blaming your partner, and one is looking at I guess there's three ways. One is blaming your partner. Another is, well, that was the wrong person. But the third way is I contributed to all the problems. That's called ultimate responsibility.
Mm.
That is growing up. All my books ultimately give us the information so that we can be responsible to create a new life, to create a different outcome. If you want your life to be different, the only way you can improve upon the past is to recognize how you contributed to what happened in the past and then change. So it's learning how to change within ourselves rather than trying to change other people. Now, if somebody's pounding on me, I want them to stop. Certainly have to affect them. But ultimately, how do I affect them? How do I have the biggest effect in the world is stop trying to change other people. Nobody ever gives you a hard time unless you're trying to change them. And yes, maybe they're doing something you don't like or you're not getting what you need and you want to change them. Nobody has taught us how to create a life where we get what we need when what we need is more than the status quo. See, the status quo is how relationships used to thrive, and that was contentment. A woman would pick a man based upon his earning potential, what she thought she could get to a certain extent. And we'll go back a few hundred years here. And basically, once you picked a man, there was nothing to change. If he had a job that was okay with you, that amount of money, that amount of support, what you could get, you got that. And so there was never any need to change him or improve him because you got what you got. And a man felt the same way. This is who I can get, and I'll be content with that. And that's reality. And men had specific roles. And as long as they did their roles that they were taught by society, like from their fathers and community, then women were content. Today, everything's changed. We want more than contentment. We want passion. We want connection. We want to grow in love. We want ecstasy. And ultimately, we want great sex. That's really the great joy of why I have so many people I love and friends around the world. I mean, so many. But it's my wife, it's my intimate partner that I love the most. And part of that is a bonding that continues throughout my life based upon something very intimate, which is being completely and totally naked with her and bringing greater happiness to her than anybody else. And she gives greater happiness to me than anybody else. So it's reorienting our thinking from, we're not looking to a partner to make us happy. We look to our partner to make us happier, but we come from a place of already fulfilled and happy. See, that's the more advanced stage of life is we want freedom. The whole thing of women and independence back in the 60s, and we want equality, we want freedom. We want to give up depending on others for our well-being. Now, that's really important. That's called freedom. I'm freedom from depending on you to make me happy. So ultimately, to do that, you have to find your happiness within. And in finding your happiness within, you get to a place of, okay, I'm happy. Well, what can a man do for me? A man can actually make me happier than I can make myself. And that's called romance and great sex. That's really where that's about. And nobody else can do that. When you have little children and babies, they bring a level of happiness that you can't find anywhere else as well. But the level of intimacy of great sex is ecstasy. It's union with the divine. It's I'm yours, you're mine, we're together forever. That's such a deep fulfillment that our soul wants to find in this physical body, which is what sex is. And yet, very few people are experiencing that. And so we have to learn new skills if we want to find that. And now you are later in life. You're not a young 20, 30-year-old. You're in your 40s, 50s, 60s. The big challenge there is finding a man to share that with. And the challenge is to find that happiness within. And all of that in my most recent work, Beyond Mars and Venus, is understanding, Men from Mars is understanding good communication skills and how men and women misunderstand each other, how we can understand each other better. But to go beyond that is to understand that we are hormonal beings and that our hormones determine our feelings in the instinctive brain of who we're attracted to and how we feel in the presence of another person. And when a woman is, in her 40s, 50s, 60s, she's way more independent. She's way more confident. She's less dependent on others. And it turns out that what makes women attractive to men and what makes men attracted to women and women attracted to men is a hormonal difference. When a woman's estrogen levels, female hormone, is much, much higher than a man's, men are attracted to you. And when a man's testosterone levels are much higher than yours, you're attracted to them. So there's this difference. The polarity has to be there of hormones. If somebody's just like you, there's no attraction. They're you, they're a friend, you have similar interests and so forth. But it's the hormonal differences that creates an interest, a passion that can take you from happiness to beyond happiness, to making you happier. And you make him happier than he can be alone. He can make you happier than you alone. But it takes a foundation to get to that step. And the foundation there is your own inner happiness, which is to understand as a woman, the challenges you have are enormous without some new clarity, some new insight. Because when you're financially secure based upon your own earning power, you're making male hormones. And when you're depending on somebody else, where you're having to practice appreciating, accepting, trusting, all those qualities produce estrogen. And estrogen has to actually double for you to have an orgasm. Normally, women's estrogen levels, you look on the averages and the hormonal charts and so forth in medicine, women's estrogen of a happy, fulfilled woman is 10 times higher than a happy, fulfilled man. So that's our baseline. But then when you're in a romantic relationship and you have sex, your estrogen levels will double if you have orgasm. So you have to be able to feel within yourself this feminine quality of depending. And I know for many women, I'm not going to depend on anybody. That makes me weak. That makes me, it's the opposite of independent. But actually it's freedom, because both men and women have a male and a female side. We all have estrogen. We all have testosterone. Testosterone says, I can do it myself. Estrogen says, I need your help. I don't want to do it all myself. Why should I do it all myself? It's, sometimes I talk about male and female power. The male side of us, the power is, look what I can do all by myself. I don't need anybody. But the female power inside of us is, look what I can get other people to do for me. I don't have to do it all. Isn't that a wonderful thing, to not have to do it all? So
it's a wonderful thing.
It's a wonderful thing. And women should know is that this is what I see with so many women, maybe all women, when I'm in the counseling room, is asking them questions. Is there's this inner pressure. I have to do more. I'm not doing enough. I don't have enough time. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I give, but I don't get back. I have to do it myself. Nobody can do it as good as me. All those. And when you look into the dating realm, typically speaking, in the dating realm, the way it shows up is he's not good enough. You get overly picky when you're on your male side. Well, we got to fix that. Well, that's not there. Your mind goes into comparison, particularly as you get older. You have many other experiences. Well, he doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. Well, he's good at this, but not that. That we get lost in comparing when we're on our male side, because that's, how do I solve the problem? I have to look at the options and solve the problem. I was at a seminar recently with some friends, and somebody quoted a beautiful quote, which is, comparison is the thief of happiness. Mm-hmm. That's what happens when your mind is looping, and it's, what about this and what about this? Am I good enough? Is he good enough? When you're in a place of hormonal balance, you're in the moment. You're not having to compare with other situations to make this acceptable. You're right there present. And I know everybody talks about being present today, being in the moment today, and that is very important. But, you can't be in the moment unless your hormones are in balance. So if we come down to sort of a stratosphere of our physical body and our brain activity, it's dependent upon, are we doing behaviors and activities and attitudes and thinking that stimulates our female hormones, or are we doing what stimulates our male hormones? And when you find that you're unhappy as a woman, you're not going to be putting out the scent that makes men attracted to you or makes you attracted to them. There's a biological connection that happens simply being in the energy and the presence of someone. You will have a reaction. And by the way, the reaction you have when you're talking to somebody online, when you're meeting them online, is not necessarily going to last at all. It may, but it's all fantasy. It's the fantasy. It's not till you're actually in an energetic presence with somebody that your body will react to them hormonally. When you're on a screen, you're living in a fantasy world. You don't yet have the energetic connection.
Right.
So this we have to know in the dating situation, why often and I say this is like really important for women, is at least if they're dating online and then they're going to meet in person, make sure that you have accurate pictures that you've shared before. I don't mean naked pictures. I just mean lots of pictures of you.
Right.
So because,
Up-to-date pictures, right? Up to date, not from 10 years ago.
yeah, so important that the pictures are up to date. The reason for that is that once you meet the man, energetically, he may be attracted to you or not attracted to you. And energetically, it has nothing to do with your picture. See, but you will feel as a woman, oh, my picture, I gave fake pictures. Now he sees the real me. So the real me is not attractive. The truth is, a woman at any age can be attracted to a man and be attractive to a man if the energetics is there. And this is something women don't understand, because there's so much identification of women with body and youthfulness and, wrinkles and weight, all that stuff. You look every day, you go to an airport, you see 50 women practically naked with these skinny bodies. And so you kind of go, everybody's looking at that and women are looking at that, and that's beautiful. Youth is beautiful, no doubt about it. But then you compare yourself to that and feel inadequate. And so there's this whole pressure on women that in order to be attracted to a man, you have to look a certain way. You don't.
Oh, you're so right, John. You're so right.
You just have to be authentic and feminine. Men are attracted to femininity. You have to be more feminine than the man, and then he will be attracted to you. There's a natural energetics there. And a kind of a funny story. I remember when I was writing my book, that book was Mars, Venus in the Bedroom. And I was writing it, and I was on a trip, and I was I went into a lingerie store to buy lingerie for my wife. She wasn't there, so couldn't have sex. I'm thinking about sex, so I went into a lingerie store. And I asked them, any funny stories you have about women shopping for lingerie? Because I'll put it in my book. And they said, yeah. 3 women come into a lingerie store, and they're all in their 60s. They're overweight, and 2 of them are buying what was called utility underwear, bras and panties.
Yeah.
The utility stuff. And
yeah, the granny panties and
granny
stuff.
Panties, right. And then one of them is not. She's got this whole sexual thing going on. She's wearing something very sexual and everything. And the other women are like disgusted with her. That's their reaction, she says. They're like, what? Who do you think you are? What are you wearing that for? You don't look so hot, And she said, you women do not understand men. When you're the only naked woman in the room, to that man, you're $1 million. And that's if women could just get that, It's now certainly if you got a young, hot, 25-year-old in a bathing suit, the guy's attention is going to go there. Why does it go there? I'll let you know. She's putting out more pheromones. It's a biological connection because she's got this young body and she knows everybody's interested in her. It stimulates her feelings of well-being, which produce those pheromones. It's all about the smell. And men, there's an extra nose up here that he's not conscious of it, but some women will just draw his attention. And doesn't mean that he's in love with them at all. It means that the primitive brain goes, oh, I can do her. As opposed to another woman who's not making those hormones to put out that scent, then you're not going to get the immediate reaction from men. But if you're in touch with your feminine energies and your estrogen levels are in balance, they don't have to be as high as a young woman. They'll never be as high, generally speaking, as high as a young woman. It's the balance of estrogen to testosterone. If your testosterone levels are lower and your estrogen is higher, then a man feels like, oh, I am needed by you, because estrogen is produced in your body when you feel I'm dependent on others for my well-being and not solely on myself. So you have a balance. Part of the day, you're depending on yourself. Part of the day, you're looking forward to somebody providing extra support for you. And so this is sort of a new picture of what we have to look for if we want to create, as a woman, to be attractive to a man and to be attracted to the man. Because so many women say to me in their 40s and 50s and they're single, I just can't find the right guy, I nice guys, but they don't do it for me. They don't do it for me. That's because her hormones, her estrogen levels are too low. And that's because she's too much on her male side. And being on your male side means you're making testosterone throughout the day. You're working for money, produces testosterone. And unless you're just happy and relaxed and love everything you do in the work world, you're not going to be making enough estrogen. You're going to be making primarily testosterone. At the end of the day, you don't have much testosterone either. You used it up, but you don't have much estrogen either. So the key for women is to have things in her life where she is experiencing high levels of estrogen. Now, there's many ways to do this. If you have let's say you have a doctor's appointment where you're dependent on them for information, support that you cannot give yourself.
Right.
That produces estrogen. Anytime you're in a relationship, so a doctor, it's meaningful because it's your life in danger. Okay? A yoga class, for example, is different from the way yoga used to be taught. I learned yoga from India. It was mainly for men, and you did it alone, and you did it as exercise. Women today have taken it on because they're on their male side, but they do it in a very feminine way where they have a leader who guides you. Somebody's there the whole time looking at you. You do it with a whole group of women. You don't do it solitary. You do it to beautiful music. So now it becomes this balance of yin and yang, a balance of masculine and feminine, helps you to come back to your female side. Even aerobics class, anything where women do together helps them to produce either progesterone or estrogen. Estrogen is produced the more you depend on someone's guidance and help. Now, certainly the biggest estrogen producer there is having sex. And this is a big obstacle for women of various degrees for different women, but still, that's the culture. I mean, this is what we come from, which is horrible. It didn't used to be that way. Go back further. You go into the jungles of the Amazon where I've been, women are very sexual. They have sex every night with their partners. This is a big deal, where women are sensual and beautiful and seductive. And this is and today women are dressing that way. They're giving themselves permission to be that way. But still, when it comes to sex, no, here's a big estrogen producer. Is not just have sex with anybody, but when a man is interested in you, particularly more interested in you, let yourself begin to explore sexuality. See, there's nothing that stimulates estrogen more than having a man stimulate you to higher levels of pleasure. Your body goes, I depend on that. The problem for women today, one of the big obstacles and challenges, is the vibrator. And which is on one level good because it's given women permission to be sexual, but not permission to be sexual with a man without all those requirements. You don't put requirements on your vibrator, you just go to business with it. What happens with the vibrator is very similar to males when they have porn. And men don't understand this either. Any man, we're seeing this now in the younger generation. At 21, some males are impotent. They can't keep it up. This is happening. It's a phenomenon that's happening now, which is they can't keep it up or stay interested in a woman sexually, sometimes the first or second time, and then it's over. Because what happens is the pornography, because it's fantasy, produces higher levels of dopamine and testosterone than a real woman ever can. And when you have higher levels of stimulation, your body adapts to that so that you require higher levels of stimulation to feel arousal. So normal stimulation, human stimulation, can't produce that much stimulation. So you don't feel aroused. So you desensitize yourself to normal relationships. And this is what's happening today in the younger generation. Same thing happens with males with pornography, is what happens with women when they use vibrators. The vibrator will produce more stimulation than a human can. It overstimulates the dopamine levels, and the estrogen and the testosterone all get overstimulated as opposed to normally stimulated, which it takes more time. There has to be more dynamics. There's an energetic field that connects. There's hormones that are balancing. All of that's not happening with a vibrator. You're not getting any real yang male energy in the experience to help you feel more feminine. So you're doing it yourself. Once again, you're going solo. But the whole key with this is you have sex only because you want to have sex, not because a man's wanting sex with you. And ideally, quite often what happens with women who are more on their male side, which is a natural thing, by the way, as you get older. As you get older, women naturally go more to their male side, but their happiness is dependent on staying on their female side as their masculine self-responsibility increases. Okay, so it's a natural thing for us to age and become more whole within ourselves. So women start out being way more female hormones, then their male hormones become more and their female hormones become less, but then the right balance in the ideal setting. For men, you see so many men when they get older, they want to retire. That's because their female energy becomes greater than their male energy. It's a natural thing as wisdom grows in men to become more feminine. Wisdom is femininity, wisdom. So men are moving towards greater wisdom, more femininity, But if they don't hold on to their masculinity, they die early. And that's what you see these guys who want to retire. Men should never retire. They should always work. They will shift gears to doing jobs which are more fulfilling for them. Because a younger man can just do the worst work as long as it makes money. Because
Right.
testosterone is sacrifice. I'll give up everything now to get what I'm going to get in the future. But as wisdom grows, you want to be happy in the moment. So retirement for a man should really be taking your gifts and talents and doing it, still working in a more meaningful way, but not so much dependent on the money. Because you do whatever it takes to make the money. Hopefully by that time, you don't do whatever it takes to make the money. You do something that you love, which contributes, maybe doesn't make as much money, but has a bigger impact. So that's the journey for men. As they go, as they mature, their female energy, which wants to enjoy, which wants to love, which wants to relax, wants to have fun, wants to have other people support you, that energy increases. His male side needs to still be strong. And for men, that's about sex. All these men at 40 and 50 are losing their drive for sex because their estrogen levels are higher than their testosterone. And there's obstacles that we have that are beyond our control in a sense, which is because the foods we eat today have pesticides. Pesticides are registered in the body as estrogen. And the meats we eat, often they add hormones to the meats. So the body hears that as estrogens. This is called xenoestrogens, estrogens that come from outside rather than generated inside. When estrogens come into the body for a man, it sends a signal to the brain to lower testosterone. That's what it does. And so estrogen lowers testosterone in men, and they lose their libidos, their motivation, their ability to enjoy sex when you're with a woman. If you're with a fantasy woman, you can still enjoy sex. That's why there's this huge addiction to online porn, because a fantasy woman doesn't generate any estrogen in you. So if I love my wife, that makes estrogen. And if I don't have strong testosterone, I love her, we're content, but we're not having sex. The interest in sex, the interest in connection is not there. But a woman online, there's no estrogen being produced because I don't care about her. I want a different woman every day. That's internet porn, the whole what goes on. That will produce a lot of testosterone. Sex produces testosterone, but no estrogen. So then he can become aroused. Estrogen lowers testosterone. They have to balance like this. So men have to give up the porn stuff. And then the other thing they have to give up, if they want to have what I teach men, I teach whole classes on this for men. I have books on this, but conscious men, I talk about that. Which
John,
is,
I have to say the women here are cheering that you're teaching men, because one of the pieces of feedback I get so often is, are men actually learning this stuff too, or is it just us? And so I'm just saying, you've got a whole chorus of women I know right now cheering that you're teaching men. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, always interrupt me. Yeah, we want, men have to be educated. We're being seduced by the porn online and all of that stuff. It just weakens us. And I don't want to sound like some purist, but now we're going to go into something that you have to understand the right context. When men masturbate, just like when men masturbate, each time they lose their capacity to build up testosterone. Is that this is something, there's another class I teach for men, is even how to orgasm with a woman without ejaculating. This is the magic. This is when you're talking your 60s and 70s, 80s and 90s and 100s, where you're wanting to have sex every day. This is like a reality and cultures where men are taught how to have orgasmic experience without ejaculating. What happens is the ideal. And the ideal is that the man never disconnects from the woman. See, this is what women have to understand when hormones are out of balance. Is men, what happens is their testosterone levels will drop. They'll see a woman, they're attracted to her, they'll start to go up, and she'll have sex, he'll have sex, and then he ejaculates, his testosterone levels will begin to drop. When they drop, he has to pull away in order to rebuild the testosterone. Detachment increases testosterone. Connection increases estrogen. So estrogen is connection. This is what's vital to women. Testosterone detachment is vital to men. But wholeness is now more vital. So when men connect with women, we go inside of a woman in sex, our estrogen levels will start to go up. Also, our testosterone will go up, and we climax with a peak of estrogen, which is why women love a man's orgasm, because he surrenders in that moment. And often women when I'm teaching couples how to have sex without ejaculation, usually the men are like cool about it because men want to last for an hour, you know, I mean, you do it
Right.
for an hour, you feel like Superman, you know, I mean, I can do 10 hours, you know, but just like, which is an amazing, I did it once just because I wanted to see if I could do it. But after that, I said, okay, I've done that. Hours is happy for me. It's a good connection is an hour. But men are like average, you know, 3 minutes, you know, 60 seconds,
Right.
you know, and maybe a stud, maybe 10 minutes or something. But even then, what will happen is the man surrenders in sex. The estrogen goes up. Then he has to rebuild his testosterone. So he pulls away after a while. He pulls back. And when he pulls back, women will tend to feel a need to go after him, which is your big mistake. And I talk about that in Men Are From Mars, how men will tend to get close and then pull away. It's all hormonal. The great thing about learning to have sex without ejaculating is men get close and they never pull away. You know, they're just always, they have their distance, which is testosterone stays up, and their estrogen is there in balance. And that's something that men can learn. It's also what women can learn. And it's hard for women to teach men that. That's the problem there. It takes a man to teach them. But women can teach them other things. For example, a woman shouldn't, ideally, a man should not penetrate a woman until she's had her first 1 or 2 orgasms. Now, those orgasms are not necessarily as big as a bigger orgasm. But to have a man come inside of a woman who's not orgasmic, well, what will happen for him is he will connect, his estrogen will go up, he'll pull away further, and she will have not achieved her orgasm. You have to realize, for a man, he gives his juice, okay? He gives himself to her. And if what comes back isn't an orgasm, he will feel even more empty and pull away more. And his mind will stray to be looking for that payback. You know, I gave, I need to get back. And so in my book, Beyond Mars and Venus, I don't teach in that book because it was too advanced. And my book, Mars, Venus in the Bedroom, was just too advanced at that time. But what I taught is that women should always have orgasm before men ejaculate. That's a really important thing. If men ejaculate without a woman having an orgasm, there's a sense of, oh, it didn't work. You know, she didn't, you know, it's like, I'm going to a job, but
It wasn't successful.
wasn't successful. And over time, men lose interest. Now, I'm not against women not always having an orgasm. It's just that men have to be taught, which is what I do in the book, is that women don't always have to have an orgasm to be fulfilled. So that's like an important thing, because sometimes women are fulfilled, but they didn't have an orgasm. But generally speaking, if you can have an orgasm before penetration, the woman has an orgasm before penetration, that's always going to be the best thing. Then when he penetrates, she can go to the next level of orgasm and the next level of orgasm, because women are designed to have many, many levels of orgasm. If we look back to history, I'll just say this, another interesting thing. You know, in the Middle East, for example, they would take off a woman's clitoris so that women could not be so sexual. Because women used to be so sexual. Sex was a big part of life. And then we have the whole Victorian age suppressing sex again, you know, controlling women, pushing them down, saying you can't be sexual, whatever, because men were threatened. And a lot of people in history, they say, oh, men were threatened because women could make babies from other men. And that's certainly a possibility and a truth. But another big truth of it is that women are sexually superior to men in their capacity to experience pleasure. You know, a woman saying, continue, continue, continue. And the guy ejaculates, he's got nothing. So, you know, she needs higher and higher levels of stimulation to hit her high levels. And a man just, he doesn't know how to do it. He can't provide it. So he feels like he's a failure. He doesn't want to be a failure. So he lessens a woman's ability to enjoy sex. And that's, women have to rekindle that power that they have of sexuality to be orgasmic. And for men to not let a man penetrate unless you've had an orgasm, because that's the big payoff for a man anyway, is stimulation before, and then to become orgasmic. If you allow him, if he learns how to hold, if he learns how to go in waves, the whole idea is that he needs to get excited, and then he gets close to orgasm, and then she has to slow it down. And then he gets excited, and then you slow it down. And what happens is he builds up his ability to have a bigger and better orgasm. With a little extra training of the muscles down there for men, he can learn to actually have orgasm without ejaculating and have 10 orgasms, okay, or as many as you want. The energy just doesn't stop. Every day, all you want, you're like that guy who fell in love with you and you're on your first honeymoon or your first dates where you spend all the time having sex. This is what we want to rekindle. This is how we stay younger and healthier. But that's a road, that's training along the way. The first step with all of that is to come back to finding your own ability to be happy. I'll take it back into the first step here, is
Mm-hmm.
happy within your femininity, and know that you as a woman are a sexual being, and estrogen is primarily dependent upon having orgasms. You want to be able to have that whole range of going up to the high levels of estrogen production, because your body's not going to be making as much estrogen as you get older. But with sex, it can start doing that. And a lot of women are dry and it's sort of painful down there. Then they can have sex which doesn't penetrate. Also, there's treatments you can do in the vagina as your estrogen levels start to drop too low. It becomes dry and the skin is more sensitive. Sex is painful. Then you're not going to be able to benefit from sex to produce your estrogen because it starts out too low. So what you can do there is one of the things on my website, besides RX for Women, which is Chinese herbs, which help restore hormonal balance. That has done a lot for women. There's also an application you can do with a form of aloe vera. And there's a video where I explain to women how to use it. It's a very powerful form of aloe vera. When you get a sunburn, aloe vera is soothing and it regenerates the skin. Well, you can put the aloe vera in the vagina for 3 weeks every night with an applicator, a new applicator each time, because you want the bacteria to increase. So new applicator each time for 3 weeks, and it all gets rejuvenated. And suddenly it's not painful. The skin gets thicker. It's just literally a healing of that area without having to take estrogen to rebuild that area. You actually just give a soothing, natural thing called aloe vera. And I have a video on that as well. And then you do it like once a week to keep it there until you're having lots of sex. Lots of sex will keep your hormones in balance. There's nothing more powerful to the whole regeneration of the body, the balance of the body, than sex. And we have this whole culture which has repressed women, try to hold women down, because actually women are superior to men when it comes to sex. A man has to really learn his power to keep it up with a woman, to satisfy her fully. Because if she goes into the orgasmic state, she'll go one level to another level. The estrogen levels will come higher. Then next day she can go over to testosterone land, be completely superwoman, and then come back and relax because she anticipates being able to hit that goal again or to achieve that high estrogen. Here's the interesting thing for women to know. If you've got this, you're very independent, you're on your own, you're making your money, you're doing your job, all that stuff, you're kind of stressed. But if you anticipate coming home to a romantic relationship, a sexual relationship, which will raise your estrogen, and it's pleasing and enjoyable. Estrogen's always pleasing and enjoyable, okay? So that's estrogen. If you anticipate, after I finish work, I'll be able to come home and do that, your estrogen levels will stay high during the day. That's the magic of anticipation. If I anticipate getting a check for $1 million, I'm happy right now. Even though the check's coming in 30 days, you're already you're feeling like a millionaire. When a woman anticipates an estrogen stimulating activity, right away her body will start making that estrogen. If a man anticipates a testosterone stimulating activity, then right away his body will start making testosterone. So what keeps us young and healthy and vital is the anticipation of those things that will stimulate those hormones. And there's nothing that will stimulate a man's testosterone than having sex with a woman who is orgasmic. And there's nothing that a woman, will stimulate more estrogen for a woman than being with a man who can bring her to orgasm. And that's one of the most powerful ways that we can come back to balance. And you start as a woman, where do you start? You start by recognizing there are men who are interested in you, but they don't stand up to your qualifications of a long-term relationship. And ideally, you let go of that concept. If a man's more interested in you, if you're interested in him, probably not going to work out. Why is that? Because if you're not that you're interested, I said something wrong there. If you're pursuing a man who's less interested in you and you're trying to get him to be interested in you, you're on your male side.
Right.
I talk to so many women who go, yeah, but the men who are interested in me, I'm not interested in them. I go, that's because you're on your male side. You need to give them a chance.
So true.
Give them a chance to pursue. They're not going to produce that testosterone excitement right away. Yin energy, the feminine energy, is slow to rise and slow to go down. You have to interact with them and you know, you're a more mature woman, you know what you like sexually and so forth. You let him do that for you, only for you. Everything is for you, not him. I give you an example, and I know that some women listening have never even had an orgasm. Half the women in America have not had an orgasm. Half of those women have never had an orgasm with a man, but they depend on a vibrator. So this is like learning how to have an orgasm. So this was a great little story once. I was teaching a class, and I was talking about how women need to learn to receive. Is that women, when their self-esteem is not fully, when they don't have permission to be all of who they are, I'll call that low self-esteem. And then when they get into the bedroom, they want to give and give and give for the man. Okay. So I was saying women have to learn to receive. And this one woman in the seminar, she stood up like, oh my God, that's it. That's it. Everybody went, what? You know, she said, that's why I had my only orgasm. And we said, well, what was it? And she said, well, there was this time in the past where I was at a bar back in the days when people didn't have internet and all that. I was at a bar, and this guy was really pushy. And I'll make a long story short. He was a little gross and below her standard, and we tried to get rid of him. But he was very patient. He was very confident. You know, he'd say things like, look, I'm only a guy. You know, I'm not a perfect guy, but, you know, I'm really attracted to you. And I can take you places that you've never been before. And he said, let's have sex tonight. I can take you places. He must have said it 5 times to her. And she thought, well, okay, I'd like to go to places I've never been before. So I'm not going to, but I'm not really like this guy. I'm not going to give him anything. I'm not going to do anything for him. He's going to have to take me places I've never been before. And then she had an orgasm. And she now realized the reason she had an orgasm is because she wasn't giving so much to the man. Now, I'm not saying you have to have some guy you don't want to give to at all. I'm just saying that you have to learn to receive. And for her, she was so out of balance. The only way she could just be selfish in sex was to not like the man at all. The goal is to be selfish in sex and love the man. Men just want to make women happy. That's the whole thing, is that women don't get that your happiness and your pleasure is the most meaningful thing for a man. But it's hard to think that, because men, once they get an erection, the erection says me, me, me. It just feels so good to hold that handle. It's just fantastic. So he goes back on himself. But if you ask men afterwards what was in their lives, what are the most fulfilling sexual experiences they had, it's always a woman having orgasms. That's it. It's not his orgasm. He doesn't go, gee, he might say, boy, I lasted so long, but it gave her orgasms. That's the whole thing, is her fulfillment is the most amazing thing for him. Because that means I achieved a goal. That means, look what I did. That's the masculine energy. Look what I did. And for the woman, the pleasure is, look what I got a guy to do for me. You know, it's like if you're a woman and you're in an office and somebody bring your boyfriend or your husband sends flowers, you're like glowing because you go, look what my partner did for me. It's a feather in your cap that somebody does something for you. Whereas for a man, it's a feather in his cap when he sees your reaction to what he did for you. And this is a bottom line gender difference that we want to honor. And by honoring it, it helps us to bring our hormones back into balance.
Yeah, I think what you just hit upon there is such gold for this audience, John, because I think for a lot of women, once they like a guy or they're interested in a guy, or they start exploring a relationship with a guy, maybe the guy is doing nice things for them, or maybe he's taking them out on dates. And so these women, many of us, and I can speak for myself back to when I was single, we start feeling like we need to reciprocate in kind. And we lose that sense of knowing and understanding how deeply satisfying it is for a man to just have a woman receive, and I like to call it graciously receiving what he has to offer, and then acknowledging in him and appreciating him, and then he's getting, it's like a win-win scenario. He's getting what he needs, and a woman is getting to receive and be fulfilled by what she's receiving. But a lot of women have become so, you know, they're thinking it's got to be this quid pro quo, or they're so unaccustomed to receiving. They're so good at giving, but they're so unaccustomed to receiving that it can be really hard for them not to start over functioning or over giving in a relationship. And I just think what you were hitting on is just pure gold for this audience.
And also to know that once the sex happens, because men do ejaculate who haven't learned how not to ejaculate, he will disconnect. He will pull back energetically. He has to pull back to rebuild his masculine yang energy. That's the yin yang feminine, masculine. He will pull back. And at that time, women would then start to give more to get him back. And that's the big mistake. She now, even if he pursued her, once he's got her, he pulls back. Now she then pursues him. And that's that over giving. And she'll do it in two basic, well, many ways. I talk about it in the book, Men Are From Mars. As men get close, they pull away. The big mistake women make is they now pursue him. They want to get him back. How do you get him back? Well, one is you punish him for pulling away. So how could you not call me for a week? I can't believe you didn't do this. Why would you do that? Because that's her feeling. She's so connected. Why did you pull away? So to punish him, to criticize him, to make him feel bad. Oh, you hurt me so much when you didn't call. Well, many men never even call. Sometimes if they remember a week later, they sort of wait, their testosterone comes back and they go, wow, that was great. And then he calls her and says, you hurt me so much. He anticipates that. So he doesn't even call. So many men say to me, oh, I forgot about her. So then remember her. She's going to be so mad at me. I won't even call her. But it's just tendency. Men to different degrees will pull away. And then they will spring back, pull away, spring back. So when a guy pulls away, one way you try to get him back is to teach him, don't do that again. And so you punish him. That's what we do, the control. Another way.
Yeah, the cold, icy response or whatever.
The cold, icy response. Another way is to give more. Oh, he's pulling away. Oh, let me call him up. Let me give more. Let me do more. Let me react more. Let me be more loving towards him because he's pulling away. That actually can push him further away. He should always be springing back to her. Her responses need to be authentic responses to him giving more to her. And then there is that natural reaction to reciprocate. And that's a beautiful feminine thing. But reciprocation means if I receive, I give back. If I receive, I give back. As opposed to I'm giving to get. I'm giving to get is healthy for men. I give to get your love. That's healthy for men. Healthy for women is I receive and I give back. And
that's a good distinction right there, John. That's really good.
And another part that goes with that, to add to that, the best giving back you can give to a man is to appreciate what he's given to you. You're literally giving me what I need when you appreciate what I do. When you accept my imperfections, it gives me even more love. When you're not demanding more of me. When you're trusting that I'm doing my best and it's good enough. As opposed to, well, you need to change, you need to do this, you need to do that. These are the greatest gifts, and women don't realize the power in that. Accepting a man, appreciating a man, trusting the best of a man is emerging in a process without you having to do anything to change him. Those messages is pure gold for men. It's better than anything you could do for him. And think about what message you're giving when you have sex to a man. It means you're literally accepting him into your body. It means that you're experiencing pleasure. You're appreciating his every touch. And you're trusting him that he's not going to hurt you, be critical of you when he's so close to you. So this is like the best experience. An orgasm, of course, when a woman has it, is total trust. It's surrender. It's opening up to receive. And that is why it's so powerful for men. That's the greatest gift you can give to a man, is to be that vulnerable and that nurtured, that sensitive and nurturing of a man's needs at that time by letting him give to you.
Mm-hmm. So can I ask you a question? This is something that comes up a lot too with the women that I speak with, is that it seems like there are men out there of all different ages, but of course this is, for the most part, a little more mature audience, where it seems like the men are not very motivated or they're not doing a whole lot. And part of that may be this hormonal thing that you were talking about, where their testosterone is low. But what are some ideas or what are some tips besides this idea of receiving, of how a woman can get more from a man without making him feel like she's trying to change him? Because I see headlines out there like how to make a man commit or how to make a man fall in love with you. And I'm like, sometimes those things feel a little manipulative to me. But I guess I'm asking, how can we bring out the best in them, or how can we invite them to step up into that masculine?
Okay, so the first step is, yes, you women have the power to bring out the best in men, which means he will change, but only because he wants to change, as opposed to you sort of manipulating or forcing a change. And so the dynamic, there's 4 steps in that. Step 1 is stop trying to change him in any way. That's heaven to a man. That means no complaining, no directing, no improving. That means noticing how you will tend to control. And every woman, every man, when we're not getting what we need, we want to change our partner because we go, oh, they made me so happy. Now I want to try to change them. And now they're not. So I have to change them back, or I have to get them how to do it better. So the first step is noticing how you will seek to change your partner and stop. Second step is to recognize that when you're trying to change your partner, which you've just recognized, it's because you're not getting something you need. That's step two. And step two then is recognize you're not getting what you need. You have to give yourself what you need. So that's self-reliance on how to find hormonal balance without depending on your partner. That means, in practical terms, how to be happy without depending on a man. You depend on a man to be happier. You don't depend on a man to be happy. That's a basic truth in my message. If you want to take your relationships to an ecstatic level, you have to already be fulfilled within yourself, not dependent on a man to be fulfilled. But you are fulfilled through your life, not a man. Your man in your life can bring you to a higher level. And that's the orgasmic state. That's the romantic state. That's the naked state. That's where, you can love your work, but you can't walk around naked and have people adore you. Okay, that's not going to happen. So this happier state is something that you can achieve through intimacy and the safety of that by picking a partner and so forth. So you want to achieve, the second step is how to bring myself back into hormonal balance. If you're wanting to change your partner, generally you're out of balance. You're dissatisfied. You're looking for more. Now you come back to giving yourself more. And what will that look like? We'll talk about in a minute. Once you give yourself more, you're back into balance. Then you give more. But this time you give your partner what they need, not what you need, not what you think they should need, but you learn how to give them what they need. And as I mentioned, men particularly, and you'll see throughout this whole series, men particularly want to feel accepted. They want to feel appreciated. They want to feel trusted. They want to be admired. They want to be the hero. They want to feel like they're contributing to your well-being in some meaningful way. That is masculinity. There will be some men, when you ask them, they're more on their female side. So they'll say, oh, I want to be able to share my feelings and my emotions, and I want her to be there for me, just like I'm there for her in that emotional way. And yes, there's some truth to that. But if it becomes a dominant need in a man, he becomes too estrogen oriented. So we have to remember that when you're listening to different men, some men are more on their female side, and it will be confusing because they'll talk about things that women primarily need. And because they can feel those needs, because when you have more estrogen, you will have all the needs that a woman has. If you have more testosterone, you'll be more on your male side. You want to solve problems and fix things and do all that stuff. So it can be very confusing when you ask somebody what they need or what's important to them. What I'm telling you is what I've learned from my 40 years of experience is that men need more testosterone. And testosterone is generated in both men and women when you celebrate, appreciate them. Oh, look what a good job you did. I need your help. The fireman who goes into the fire, he's the hero. That's his testosterone shoots way up. This is what, if you need more testosterone, what you need is you need more appreciation, acceptance for who you are, and trust. If you want more estrogen, what you need is someone to care more about you. You're special, you're a priority, someone who understands you. Understanding is penetrating into your feelings and your thoughts and your wishes and wants and needs. And somebody who honors you as much as they honor themselves, or honors you even more than themselves sometimes, prioritizing you. And that's called respect. That's what women need most. We live in a culture that says women should learn to respect men. No, that's the dysfunctional. That's why we're so dysfunctional, is women yielded their own needs to respect men, when really who needs more respect in our society today is women. Not that men don't deserve respect, not that men don't need respect, but when you respect someone, it doesn't make testosterone. When you admire someone, when you appreciate someone, it makes more testosterone. And you can also respect them for their estrogen stimulation. But it's not like, what respect is yielding your needs for the needs of another. You respect your children by getting up in the middle of the night and feeding them. You don't want to feed them. You want to go to bed. You want to sleep. But you honor someone by sacrificing for them. And that's what men, noble men, always respect the family. When the ship's going down, it's women getting in the boats first, and it's all men for yourself. This is where we are, where men in the past had learned to respect women. And then we got off track, without a doubt, where women lost respect, and this sexual repression and pushing women down and so forth. And it was just an ignorant time. But today, what this whole women's movement is about is we deserve equality. That means we deserve respect. because when you respect someone, it makes more estrogen. But if you have to fight for that respect, which happens a lot, what you become is a man to try to get your female needs met. But it's like a strategy doesn't work. If you have to fight for respect, then you're on your male side. What you're looking for is a woman who will respect you, which is why what you want is a man who's pursuing you. They're the ones that will respect you the most. So appreciating, accepting, and trusting, a simplified way of understanding what men need most. So when you go step 2, where you learn to balance your hormones, come back to happiness from a place of fullness, now overflow by giving him what he needs, not doing things for him, but appreciating what he has done for you, what he is doing for you. That's the greatest gift you can give to a man. Then step 4, that's the one we're waiting for, you can ask for support. But when you ask for support, you're not trying to change him, you're expressing a preference rather than a demand. And I can give you the words for how to ask men for support, but if you're coming from a place of saying my happiness is dependent upon you changing, men will resist. Just like if a woman's in a bad mood and a man says, look, get over it. Why are you upset about that? You shouldn't feel that way. We're trying to change how you feel. It's not going to make you feel better. And what we're saying to you is that my happiness is depending upon you feeling different. Men should not be that way. Men should be embracing a woman's moods wherever they are, up and down, up and down. That's giving her what she needs to stabilize her hormones, which is showing caring, empathy, understanding, penetrating into her inner psyche, understanding where she is, feeling empathy, honoring her, respecting her, letting her feel equal in terms of opportunity and respect. And that's what we're trying to achieve in the world. But you're not going to get it by fighting men. You're going to get it by loving men. They will give more when men get what they need. And then women go to step 4, which is asking for what they want as a preference. That, when you're in an intimate relationship, and we're talking about intimate relationships here, then a man is free to choose to give you more. Then he changes based upon his choice rather than feeling that I have to change in order to make her happy. It becomes, I want to give her this because I see how it will make her happy. So it's a delicate distinction there. You have to have some wisdom to decide to distinguish between demanding and preference. But if you express a preference to your partner and they're not getting an abundance of love, usually they don't respond. So the idea is how to go through those 4 levels again and again to get more from a man, which means to bring out the best in him, just as I would bring out the best in my wife. And if you're married and you're having a sexual relationship, the best time to express your preferences is after having an orgasm. Because a man feels he's getting what he needs.
Okay, so what you said something, I can tell you the words. Can you tell us, can you model really quickly what it might sound like for a woman to ask for something she wanted in a way that a man could respond, assuming we've gone through the 4 steps?
Yes, now let's look at the words. Give me one request a woman would want. Just let me know. I'll deal with that.
Maybe he could do more around the house.
Okay, let's call it. He doesn't empty the trash. Okay, or he could clean. What would, give me a specific? First of all, that's an abstract. I want you to do more around the house. That means nothing to a man. It has to be a specific task that he does and gets rewarded for. So give me a task that would be part of doing more about the house.
He would do the dishes.
All right, that's a big one. So it'd be, let's say she's doing the dishes and he's not. Already he's been trained that he doesn't have to do the dishes to make you happy. So you're happy and you're doing the dishes and now you want him to do the dishes. The way you would start is you simply say, oh, honey, I'm really tired tonight. Would you help me? And he'd say, what is it? And he said, would you do the dishes tonight? And he'd say, he'd grumble a little bit and you would then go, most women at that point would go, oh, okay, I'll just do it myself, because he grumbles. You have to recognize you're asking him to do a new job. He has to decide whether to do it. Is it necessary? Is it required? I haven't had to do it before. Why do I have to do it now? There's sort of this resistance a man will have to being asked to do more, because he gets the message with a request that, gee, I haven't been doing enough. I work really hard. I'm really tired. I did this whole thing and now I have to do more. So, and maybe his mother always did the dishes. So he has this idea that women do dishes. There's a lot that has to overcome there. So what you do is you say, honey, I'm really tired tonight. You could actually start with, would you help me with the dishes? See, again, every job, every request, you want to go gently. little progression, little progression. A baby doesn't learn to walk. They start to crawl first. That's normal life. It's trees don't just suddenly make flowers, it takes a season to get there. So everything is slow. Real change is slow. So you basically, oh, I'm really tired tonight. Would you help me? Would you bring over the dishes and wash them and I'll put them in the dryer? Whatever, make a little request. And then when he does it, he experiences a little change and you delight in it. He gets to see, it's like, oh, it's so much help. It feels so good. Men will always respond to what feels good. Then another night you do that again and do that again. And then no big discussion. Your job is this, my job is that. You would just simply say, oh, I'm so tired. Would you do the dishes tonight? And because he's so used to getting rewarded for doing this little thing, then he's happy to do it. But you have to realize a lot of men, when it comes to dishes and housework, have been trained in a culture where men didn't do that. They didn't experience growing up doing that, seeing dad do that. Oh, you have huge advantage if he saw his dad doing it. But if his dad never did it, his part of his training is you don't do that. So you have to gradually adjust to this and be okay with that. Realize there's logic to that rather than the other logic, which is we both have a job. Why am I doing this? You should do it too. That you should do it too attitude is the opposite of accepting where a person is. So it's a gradual movement towards greater intimacy by little requests, rewarding those little requests. Then he gives more and he gives more and he gives more. And let's say you had huge resistance to washing dishes. Then you start with something else, oh my gosh, would you help me by doing this? But it always comes from a thing of he comes home, he's kind of like in his own world, he's in his cave world. And you just say, oh, honey, when you have a chance, would you help me? That's how you introduce it. Honey, when you have some time tonight, would you help me? He's going to go, well, what do you want? What do you want? You go, oh, I'll tell you later. Just let me know when you're available. I just need like 10 minutes. Give him a time limit, give him a little request, and then he says, well, what is it? I want to do it now. Okay, well, only take 10 minutes. He says, okay, what is it? And you say, would you help me put away the dishes? Or would you help me unload the dishes? A specific request. Not a general thing. We're making a policy here, a specific request and a reward afterwards. And again, women have to look at their own resistance to that reward afterwards because she's going to be feeling, look, I've been doing them every night. I didn't ask for a big reward or parade.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. So in a dating situation, like if a woman is feeling frustrated because the man never really plans anything for a date, just as an example,
Great
and
example.
she'd like for him to plan, when he shows up and says, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Women love a man with a plan. So how much she encourage him in that way?
Okay, so that's what men have to learn is women love a man with a plan. And what women have to learn is they have to help him make the plan. So basically on Friday, let's say he says, he comes over Friday night, or he calls and says, oh, what do you want to do tonight? That's the most unromantic thing a man can do, but men don't know that. So what you would do is, since that's what he did, you would accept that's what he did. And while you're together that night, well, let's hang out and let's look at the newspaper and plan what we're going to do next week. That's what you do. If he's going to hang out, okay, we're going to take this time to hang out. We'll sit and watch TV. And during that time, we bring out something and you say, I was looking in the newspaper, I was looking online, and I was thinking next week we could do some really fun stuff. Like we could do this. We could go to this art gallery. We could go to this walk. They're having a walk onto the mountain on that day. The weather's going to be really good. Or we could go, there's this restaurant I heard about. We could have dinner there. So what you do as a woman, your job in making a plan, it's not all up to the man. Okay. Your job is to let him know options that you would like to do and when you'd like to do them. His job is then to pick one of those options and follow through and provide it. So he says, well, will you think about it and plan one of these things? And what do you think we should do? You go to him and you say, what do you think we should do? And whatever one he picks, you agree with. It's okay. Will you get the tickets? Or will you arrange the tickets? And what should I do? Kind of put it in his hand to organize it. And what happens then is he now owns the date, so that when you're happy on the date, he takes credit for it. His testosterone goes up and your estrogen goes up because you didn't have to organize your plan. But what you had to do is inform him of what you'd like to do. One of the out-of-date idea that women have when it comes to romance is that men should know what you want. Men should do it all on their own. And certainly on a date in the beginning, a man works really hard to think, what can I do to please her or whatever. And he'll do one or two things that he knows work. But after that, he doesn't know what else. It's up to her to let him know the things she'd like to do. It's up to him to pick and provide. And so would you organize that? And maybe what you could do, even when you're saying, would you organize that? I will do this, and would you do that? So you let him know what you'd like him to do. And you can always throw in a little bit of, I'll do this. You know, if it's a picnic on the mountain or going to the mountain play, here you'd say, well, I'll make a lunch for us. Would you get the tickets and organize transportation? So you basically, those are all requests. That's your participation in a date, is to know what you'd like, give him choices. So it's not just, what doesn't feel very romantic or good is to say, you know, there's the mountain play this weekend. Will you take me next weekend? Then he's doing what you're in charge and you're controlling the whole thing, and it's not really his gift to you. So you always want to give him choices that he picks. So, there's a mountain play this weekend that'll be really fun, or go to the art gallery, or we could go for that walk on the mountain. What do you think we should do? And put it in his hand. And then whatever he says, you're training him now. You go, okay, great idea. Let's do that. Now, let's say you really, really want to go to the mountain play. Well, occasionally you can just control it and do that. But the bottom line is you want to create a context where he experiences taking charge, being responsible, doing things for you, and having it pay off really good. And part of the job there for you, and this is how women unknowingly kill romance, is, she says, oh, let's go to the mountain play. And then you go, oh, that was awful. I didn't really like it. You complain about it. Then he feels like, well, then you figure out everything next time. He just starts giving up the initiative to provide things, because he might say, let's go and do this. And you go on the date and you're just having conversation. Let's say I take you to a restaurant and the food's not that great. It's just conversation for two women going to a restaurant to talk about how bad the food is. There's no problem with that. But on a romantic date, you don't talk about how bad the food is. Your focus as a woman is to talk about what's good about the date. His focus is to provide the date and get the encouragement that he's successful. That's your whole goal on a date, is to give him the message. He took initiative. He should always be appreciated for that. And if you want to talk about, I don't want to go back to that restaurant again, you could do that on another day as a casual comment. But there's something delicate about romantic dates where a woman's sensitivity needs to be not to give negative messages about what's happening, but to be extremely appreciative, accepting. And he's trying to do his best by planning something and doing something. And he's encouraged when he feels, I have the power to make you happy. I'm not saying you have to always be, this whole thing where women have to smile and be happy and all the time. You don't have to smile and be happy all the time. But if it's a romantic date, that's a time to put your best foot forward. And we all know that we can do that. You go for a job interview, you're going to naturally put your best foot forward. That's not the time to complain or talk about, what's not working. You talk about your best self. In an interview, they say, well, what are your most challenging aspects as a person?
Yeah.
What are your weaknesses? You don't tell them your weaknesses. You say, well, I think my weakness is I give too much. I work too hard.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's your weakness. I mean, every interviewer goes, great. That's what I want. Somebody who works too hard for me. But you don't say all your issues, and you try to minimize that. So we have the ability, kind of like a woman's purse. You can pull out all kind of different stuff. It can be there. You don't have to empty the whole thing. So on a romantic date, that's when you focus on being your best, most loving self, your most tolerant self, the most accepting self. And that's where a man will reciprocate in kind by being most considerate, most understanding, most supportive, and so forth. This is where we put on our fancy outfits and go out on something romantic. And of course, the best thing is the great sex that could come from it. Because if a man is taking care of you, respecting your wishes, providing you what you want, not what he wants, but what you want, that will help increase your estrogen so that you can then have great sex afterwards or in the morning after, whichever it might be.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I know you've been so generous with your time, and this has been absolute gold for this audience. I can't wait to share what you have shared today with the audience. And as I mentioned earlier, I really want to thank you both personally and professionally for your work and for your contribution. It really means a lot, and I really appreciate your generosity.
Well, thank you so much. And I always like to remind people, because they know me as men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but all of this hormone stuff and sex stuff and romance that I've been talking about in this show is in the new book, Beyond Mars and Venus, Men from Mars will always be a classic, but Beyond Mars and Venus gives us this additional information. And in addition, it also helps us to understand how, certain Chinese herbs can help restore the balance of hormones, because we're always fighting against this environmental toxicity that lowers testosterone in men, lowers estrogen in women. And there's RX for women, which helps hormonal balance for women without having to take hormones. There's Tongkat Ali, which helps to bump up a man's testosterone levels, even help a woman with her libido as well. But more importantly is the estrogen side of that for women. There's something called super minerals for women that I have at my website, which have the cofactors for making more serotonin in the brain, so your mind doesn't do the looping. The physical side of this can be so helpful in applying the ideas that I've been talking about to achieve balance. The difference between drugs and natural support is that natural support works if you're moving in the direction of the right behaviors. But the drugs will just affect you, they change you, and it's not really authentic or real, and that you always go out of balance as a result in the side effect. But natural supplements can help to find the physical support to make it easier to make these hormonal shifts inside yourself.
Thank you so much, John. I'm really grateful that you've shared this, because I think it can be so valuable, especially for this age group and this audience of women where we're going through a lot of different hormonal changes and that sort of thing naturally in the body. And so I'm really grateful for your wisdom and knowledge on this subject. And yes, ladies, make sure you check out John's book, Beyond Mars and Venus, and also all kinds of resources and the supplements and things that he's talked about are available at marsvenus.com. So again, John, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you again, and my honor to interview you once again. And I really appreciate your generosity and the way you always show up. You're not only generous in your knowledge, but generous of spirit. I've always just found you to be so gracious. So thank you for that.
It's my honor. Thank you.
All right, ladies, and be sure to join us for more